everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Crypto 101 podcast. I'm your co-host, Bryce, not joined today by my better half, Mr. Brendan Beeman. No, he had some obligations pop up last minute. He could not join us. But hey, I would hate to be him because he's missing out on what's going to be an incredible conversation about DePIN, which is decentralized physical infrastructure. Although DeFin would also be a pretty cool name for it, DeFin, physical infrastructure. But DePIN and everything that has to do with decentralized compute, graphics processing, and so much more. I'm joined today by Kyle Okamoto, who's the CTO of Aethir, joining us today at the Crypto 101 podcast. Kyle, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Bryce. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Likewise, I'm very excited. Look, you've got an incredible background before you were diving into crypto full time in the enterprise world, places like Ericsson, and I just think that from our standpoint, we look to guys like you who've built industries in the past. You're coming over now to this newer industry, which is still learning and getting a foundation, and you're building the foundations here. Kind of what are the learnings that you're going to take from building Web 2 and apply here to Web 3?
Yeah, spending a lot of time in hyperscale infrastructure in the past in a traditional centralized Web 2 fashion, I've seen firsthand for 20 plus years all the problems with it, right? The lack of availability, the discrimination against socioeconomic sectors, the discrimination against geographic regions of the world, the lack of accessibility for innovation, the high barriers of entry to ideate and create new things and make things very easy to experiment. So taking a lot of those lessons learned from 20 years of pain and getting a chance to do things the right way for longevity and scalability is super exciting, right? We've been messing around with blockchain for a long time now, and I've had the pleasure of getting involved in several different Web3 projects, from media streaming to data processing, right? But I think with DePIN, it's a great opportunity to democratize access to one of the world's most precious resources, right? Compute, and something that powers everybody's lives every day, whether they realize it or not. And so I think that our mission and vision of really exposing that access and making it easy and affordable, helps me sleep at night, but, also is really the guiding light on why Aethir exists and why we do what we do.
Totally. And would you say Aethir is, would you say it's almost like a decentralized platform similar to like a decentralized AT&T or a decentralized Verizon? Does it kind of facilitate those same kinds of connections, or is it kind of trying to disintermediate somebody else along the line?
Yeah, that's a good question. Ultimately, our, like you said, decentralized physical infrastructure network is really utilized to democratize access and distribute the ownership of physical infrastructure, specifically GPU-based compute, to solve real-world problems, right? Whether that's finance or healthcare or energy or specifically AI and gaming. And it's really like an aggregation of enterprise-grade GPU compute clusters around the world. What that means is that the community are the ones contributing the physical infrastructure. And the community is also monitoring and enforcing that infrastructure to make sure that we can provide SLAs to customers. They're administering the rewards. Those rewards are staying in the community. So in that sense, think like the typical analogy is like Uber or Airbnb, right? Uber doesn't own any cars, they don't own any drivers, but they facilitate riders and drivers connecting, albeit in a centralized Web 2 fashion. Same thing with VRBO or Airbnb. They don't own the apartments or the villas or the houses, but they're ultimately allowing those community contributing members to access the demand side, right? And so in that sense, some people say marketplaces, some people use, facilitators. Really what we're forming here is an ecosystem, a two-sided ecosystem, or a community of companies that have GPUs that have either idle or underutilized capacity that they want to expose to the community. And then the demand side are developers, enterprises, gaming companies, people like you and I that need to experiment and get access to something that would take them 12 months to wait in line and millions of dollars to purchase, and lots of manpower or people power to figure out how to find space and power and liquid cooling facilities and all the other fun complexities to stand up this infrastructure. Instead, they can get it in a matter of seconds. So Aethir really does facilitate both sides of that ecosystem.
No, that's awesome, and it makes a ton of sense. And are there render farms that are out there right now outside of like the Web3 enabled world? And if so, kind of what are the drawbacks or the positives to using kind of a render farm that might already exist in the Web2 world?
Yeah, so there's definitely Web2 providers out there. I would say that they come with their pros and cons. There's definitely access, and a lot of people talk about the shortages of GPUs in the space. I think NVIDIA just came out and said they're booked up for 12 months on Blackwell, right? And they haven't even really shipped any.
Meaning that their new AI chip that they're going to be selling is already sold out, pre-ordered 12 months, and so
and the people that are getting them are companies that everybody's heard of, right? Tesla, Meta, AWS, etc. Right? Not you and I, right? So I think that there's a significant supply chain issue, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a shortage. I would say rather that the traditional Web2 side of things, when it comes to GPUs, it's really just about an inefficiency, right? When we talk to enterprises that have purchased large amounts of GPU infrastructure from the likes of Dell and HP and Supermicro with NVIDIA chips in them, and we ask them, well, what's your utilization rate on this hardware? Generally, the answer is anywhere between 15 and 25%. So they've bought millions of dollars worth of infrastructure, and they're using a fifth of it.
Are they just hoarding it?
I mean, that is massively inefficient, right? And if you remember, the whole migration to the cloud was because of that exact concept, right? People were buying a bunch of servers back in the day, and they weren't using a lot of them. They could get rid of all that CapEx, move to the cloud, and save a bunch of money. Well, then what happened? They all moved to the cloud, and their costs ended up ballooning. And they said, it's probably cheaper to go back to the old ways of buying. So that kind of yo-yo paradigm in the Web2 world is one of the main drivers of why we exist, right? We solve that problem. We allow customers, enterprise clients to keep up with the latest hardware without having to own it. We allow the community to monetize that underutilized and unused capacity to where they bought too much or they're just not using it correctly. And we can drive up that efficiency, right? So that enterprise that spent tens and tens of millions of dollars on buying a cluster and is only using 20% of it can now get a much better return on their investment because they can monetize much more of that infrastructure than they could before. And that really drives the overall operating costs, or the total cost of ownership rather, down, right? And that savings, that incentive, that reward structure that we've created with Aethir allows enterprises to get access to the same exact amazing hardware that these titans of industry are buying directly from the source at a fraction of the price, right? Because they've already bought it. They've already deployed it. They've already powered it up. They're already operating it. And we're just helping them increase their overall efficiency and ROI on those investments. And that savings can all be passed on to the actual end users, the clients of Aethir, that get access to this amazing, amazing infrastructure to run models, to train things, to run inference, to run VFX, whatever the use cases may be. And that ultimately is one of our main goals, right? So I like that there are inefficiencies in the Web2 world because it's enabled us to expose a lot of that infrastructure at a very affordable rate to clients across both Web2 and Web3.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating, kind of two comments on that is just, it's amazing that, GPUs, they could be used for so many different things, so many different applications. It's not just, if you asked me 10 years ago, graphics processing units or whatever, what are they going to be used for? Video games and rendering animation. And that's it, right? That's all my mind would go to. And now it's like, no, you use GPUs to render, like you said, AI models or camera vision learning stuff. And there's just